welcome to Smidgen of Proof audio experience. I would like to introduce you today to Mike Nager. Mike works at Festo Didactic, bringing 25 years of industrial experience to his role in the custom solutions department. He actively combats the skills gap by co-developing hands-on learning factories with educational institutions, enabling students to gain a holistic understanding of manufacturing. Additionally, he promotes awareness of manufacturing careers through his published books for children, parents, teens, and teachers. Guys, it is Manufacturing Week, and Mike and I have a great episode for you today, where we will be talking about smart manufacturing, the rise of AI and robotics, and how innovation ultimately impacts everyone. Enjoy the show. All right, Mike, thanks so much for coming on today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it greatly. Get the word out about this important topic, and looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I was looking at our schedules, and this, we scheduled this a couple weeks ago. But interesting enough, I didn't realize that next week or even this Friday is Manufacturing Week. So, perfect timing, right?
Perfect timing. In fact, we're recording this on a Wednesday, and this
Yep.
Friday I will be presenting at the New Jersey Manufacturing Execution program for
Okay.
Manufacturing Day. So right in
that's
central
awesome.
New Jersey. Yep.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, and this is actually going to go live, or I guess it's going to air on the following Tuesday. So this next Tuesday. So it'll be during Manufacturing Week. So interesting how that all worked out.
Very cool.
But yeah, it is.
Very cool.
So so smart manufacturing, I think, is one of those terms. I think in certain circles it becomes kind of buzzy. You see smart labs, smart manufacturing, smart kind of everything's becoming smart tech. For those that may not know exactly what smart manufacturing or have their own idea of what smart manufacturing, how would you explain smart manufacturing in your words?
Yeah, so that's a good question for sure. So a lot of people, when they hear the word manufacturing, there's still a little bit of a stigma that the manufacturing industries are dirty and dangerous and dull. And the term smart manufacturing tries to say, hey, we're talking about modern day manufacturing. It's not manufacturing that you might have in your head, from 50 years ago or 40 years ago or even 30 years ago. And what it's trying to do is encapsulate the idea that manufacturing is just as high tech as any other industry that you can imagine. And,
Okay.
and the smart portion of it refers to the use of data and information to make informed choices in the manufacturing operation.
Gotcha. Oh, that's great. That's great. And so when you look at trying to bring awareness and establish that concept to many different people, different demographics, different age groups, right? I know that one of the great things that I was looking into when we first met was the books that you've written. So there's three. You've had one, I think two that are kind of more student oriented around the Smart Student's Guide to Smart Manufacturing
Yeah.
Industry 4.0. And a little tidbit. I think it's interesting that there's some people that are already trying to push us to an industry 5.0, and
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
guys, no, we're not there yet. We're not there yet. Slow
Right.
down, slow down. So I think it's great to recognize that. And then the smart manufacturing terms, you need to know more than 100 terms defined, from 3D printing to Zigbee. I think that's great. I think that there are way too many acronyms for us to keep up with these days, and terms. I think it's important that we define things. We say, okay, what does this mean, and how do I understand the industry? And then lastly, which I think is great, I just saw this too, that you 2024 Big Book Award. So congratulations on the All About Smart Manufacturing. Our kids, we homeschool, and so we have a lot of the All About. We went all the to
Okay.
Etsy and eBay and got all the about books and whatnot
Right.
that they like to read. And so when I saw that, the title's great for one, but yeah, walk me through some of that. Like, what was your what was your your methodology and some of your approach that you wanted to take on how to separate what content you're going to put in, what you wanted to share, and the kind of the messaging you wanted to produce for those books.
Yeah, certainly. So, I've been in this field for a long time. I've worked for manufacturers of industrial controls for many decades now. And what I saw, what was missing in the market was information and literature that would kind of soft start someone into the understanding of what manufacturing is and what it's all about. There's a lot of textbooks and other types of literature that are out there that are too complicated. They have too many of those acronyms that you discussed, too many complex topics that are, you don't have to explain all the details to get the message
Sure.
across. So that first book, the Smart Student's Guide to Smart Manufacturing, that was the idea at the time. I had high school students in my family, and
Okay.
I realized there was no teachers, no counselors that actually had a good awareness of the manufacturing industry, even though it's a huge industry, right? If you look at everything that gets manufactured. So I wanted to write that in a very friendly manner, not using a lot of needlessly complicated terms or introducing, minutiae of different aspects of it, but talk in
Sure.
more general language so that students and teachers and counselors could understand.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. So, interesting enough, I spoke at a recent automation digitalization conference in Houston this last week, and one of the things we talked about were the idea that human intelligence and artificial intelligence is starting to be very close together, and then that typically the one thing that is probably more so that's going to be overcome by humans more so than artificial, at least in the foreseeable future, is emotional intelligence. It's this idea that we've got to make sure that we're able to strengthen and have abilities that are very human, not very robotic. During some studies that I was working on, 470 million manufacturing jobs are in the world right now as of 2018. Now I'm sure that's gone up a little bit since then. I didn't realize it was that high. And then there are some reports. 10,000 humanoids are in the manufacturing space today, right now, as of today. And by 2050, there's an estimated 63 million humanoids that could be in the manufacturing space. So I'm curious because I know that I think from our past conversations, I think there's a little bit. I don't know if it's a disagreement, but I think that there's some areas where we definitely think differently about what's going to happen in the future, and I'm curious on what your thoughts are in regards to this this production of humanoids in the next 25 over the 25 next 25 years, and then how does that work with the smart manufacturing people side of the industry?
Yeah, yeah. So I think one thing is clear. Technology and progress is going to continue. So
Sure.
we've seen a lot of advancements in robotics, collaborative robots splashed onto the scene maybe in a
Yeah.
big way starting 5 years ago, and have quickly taken over a lot of applications. A collaborative robot, if you're not familiar with it, is a robot that is designed to be safer to work with humans in close proximity without being caged off and protected by fences and things of that nature. Um, with the increased quantity of these robots being produced, the cost is coming down pretty dramatically. So,
Yep.
uh, not as dramatically as semiconductor world would be. But
Sure.
it's getting to the point where people are considering, oh, we could automate a kitchen at a restaurant. We could have fast food robots frying fries and flipping burgers.
Hmm.
The cost is coming down to that point. So technology is going to advance. It's going to change jobs. It's going to change careers, and we have to accept that as a reality for sure. Um,
Yeah.
you know, there is a parallel that we've already lived through, and that's agriculture. So 100 years
Sure.
ago, agriculture was mostly a manual operation. You had family farms. Those families usually had tons of kids, um, 8, 10, 12 kids, that were providing manual labor.
Hmm.
And we had mechanization and tractors and things of that nature. So now that industry is completely changed, right? There's still
Yeah.
positions.
and they're massive, right? These machines are massive, and now they can be controlled from a phone. It's pretty impressive, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Some of the
exactly.
automation that's being done in the agricultural space.
Exactly. And
Yeah,
every industry is starting to use that smart adjective in front of its name. So the
yeah,
technologies that are going into smart manufacturing are the same ones that are going into smart farming, smart agriculture, smart buildings, smart
yeah,
cities.
yeah. Interesting enough, when I hear the word smart, I can't not think of the smartphone, right? The smartphone is kind of what started this whole
Yeah.
smart, and then add your add whatever word you want behind it. I'm interested though and curious on, does smart obviously, and I agree with you on that. I think that the idea that optimization, automation, there's a form of when you're doing discovery, and I call it add. You have to, if you're deciding on optimization or optimizing something, the idea is that, can you automate it? Should you delegate it, or should you delete it? And that allows us to go through this process, because sometimes the processes that used to exist traditionally don't even need to be there anymore. They were not adding any value, or things have changed so much that it's not needed anymore. And so there's that deletion. The delegation is, does that mean I need to take that from a higher level position to a lower level position? Do I need to take that from a human to a robotic? Or the automation in general is that could automate the process. You could automate other aspects of it, but typically process, and what does that actually mean? So I think when you start going through the automation process, automation, delegation, deletion, and when we start talking about smart, I think smart also is going to evolve over time. What does smart actually mean? Because we think smart is going and being more optimized, but at what point do we become completely optimized where there is no more continual improvement? I kind of ponder that. Is, do we reach a point to where we are 100% optimized, and what does that look like in a future state? I would be curious if you could respond to maybe that. I know it's kind of very it's a very broad question and very kind of hypothetical, but I think it's interesting. It's an interesting concept to think, could we be fully optimized? And if so, what would that look like?
Yeah, yeah, no, it's interesting. Just yesterday, I heard a different podcast where they were talking about, a future where every job is eliminated, and what's the role of humans in a world,
Yeah.
kind of
Very
like one,
doomsday kind of stuff, right? Like,
kind of. But they made a point. There's already a precedent for large populations of people not actually working. So they took the example of children, which we just talked about, working on the farm 100
yep.
years ago, right? When you were 3 years old, you had a job picking turnips or something, right? Now, a whole class of children, are barred from working,
Yeah.
by law in most places.
Yeah.
So we already have a precedent. We have rehired people that aren't working, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it might not be as far fetched as it as it initially sounds. But I would say this for the short term,
Hmm.
you talk about optimization, and if you talk about a factory that's pumping out a commodity product and they fine tune their process so much. And, I can remember being in factories that made double A and triple A batteries, right?
Okay.
And these factories would make, 400 million batteries per year. And you couldn't even see the batteries on the machines going through.
Incredible.
So
Yeah.
super fast. Well, there, any little tweak, a half a percent of efficiency gain meant a big thing. But those types of applications are pretty rare when you look at it. Most operations have a lot of low hanging fruit because they're not that high volume, 400 million exactly identical pieces.
Sure.
There's a higher mix of product that has to be produced. And there's productivity gains, energy savings gains, throughput gains that can easily be measured in tens, 20s, 30%, 40%, 50% increases. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, at least in the short to medium term, to really get nice productivity gains by using automation.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So when you look at you know, people that are coming up in this space, they're graduating high school, they're getting degrees, the students, it's people that would read your books, essentially. When they're looking at this space, what is the advice that you could give someone that's either entering this space or maybe even in this space today that's been working there for, 5, 10, 20 years? Because one of the things that I constantly talk to, so I do work with students to help coach them from career perspectives and to help them kind of formulate some of their concepts of what they want to do. And I never had that growing up, and so it was one of the things that I kind of do to help give back. And one of the conversations I have all the time is, what are you interested in, and will it still be interesting in 4 to 8 years to you? The other side of that, though, is what are you interested in, and will it still be relevant in 4 to 8 years? Are you getting a degree that when you get out, if it's in, code used to be the big thing, right? It's like everybody needs to learn how to code.
Right.
I remember even thinking before I had kids, I have a 3 and a 7 year old, and I thought, man, we got to get them coding. And now with AI advancing so fast and so quickly, and especially in the coding space, I wonder, well, do they even need to learn to code anymore? I'm curious on what your advice is to people that are trying to get in this industry, because I do agree that there's a short term and there's a long term, and the short term is probably a little longer than we expect it to be. I think that there's these people, there's two buckets, there's the two sides of the coin right there, where one, a group of people say, it's gonna take it 5 years and we're all gonna be doomed.
You're right.
Right.
And some
It's happening
smart
so
people think
fast.
that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then you've got the other side is like, hey, look, we're at least 50 years away from this, really. I mean, there's going to be certain industries that are hit hard. There's going to be certain industries that are very disruptive. But, as a general rule of thumb, like 50 years is probably, what we're looking at. Maybe 30 years to 50 years. But I think that there's still that long term versus short term concept. So, what's your advice? Going back to the question, what's your advice to people that say, "Hey, I want to get into this industry, but I'm just a little bit uncertain that it's still going to be the industry that when I started versus when I get finished to actually go and join and make a difference."
Yeah. So I think that the biggest thing that we can encourage people to do is more of a soft skill, right? So it's having an open mind, a growth mentality as things shift, because things in our lifetime have shifted very rapidly. Over the last 50 years. If we go back 100 years, it's shifted very rapidly. We know
Yeah,
that that's accelerating.
yeah,
It's not slowing down. It's not about to slow down. I do not subscribe to the doom and gloom scenario. You
sure,
I think it's great that we have artificial intelligence now that can assist our medical industry in scanning things like X-rays and MRIs, and at least put up a flag, if something gets missed.
yeah,
Um, and it's, in my mind, it's kind of like a spell checker. Like, okay, when I was in third grade, I was a terrible, terrible speller, and we had a spelling test every week. I think I got a 100 once on one
nice,
test, and we took like a photo
nice,
with the teacher, and that
nice,
was a big deal because that was a film camera, right? Uh,
yeah, oh yeah,
um, and then they're like, what are you going to do if you can't spell? And I think I made some like smart ass remark, like, oh, I'll have a secretary do that or something like that. But now we have a spell checker, so we don't even need a secretary or someone that, office assistant or someone like that to do
yeah,
typing, right? Um, so these are tools, and I keep on coming back to, if you position yourself as someone that knows the why of how, instead of the how to do something,
hmm,
that you are going to be in a good position. So, medical field's a good one. Financial services, is another one. Yeah, it's one thing to have computations, done automatically, but why, should we do this certain thing? Why should we shift to a new product line? You know, uh, why should we try to create something new when the existing product is seems like it's good enough? Uh, those are things that are much harder to anticipate, being done automatically, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. I mean, it's 85% of, I think according to LinkedIn study, 85% of employees do not know their company's strategy. That why they don't they don't have a clue about how they're impacting the greater vision and strategy of the company. When you look at manufacturing and kind of the roles that humans will play, um, I can't help to think. I was at Home Depot a few weeks ago, and I was checking out. Well, I was in the line to check out, and they have self-serve checkouts now, right? And
yeah,
most places do, most retail do. And there was two openings, but the lights were off. But it was self-serve, and there was a lady that was standing there, and I said, "Hey, so is this broken? Can I use it?" And she says, "Well, no, we don't have enough people to man the stations." I said, "Well, but it's self-serve." And she's like, "No, but we have a rule that we have to have so many people available to help for the self-serve." And it blew my mind thinking like, wait a second. I thought the whole reason for self-serve was to self-serve. But yet we're still relying on a person to kind of help ourselves through this automated process, this streamlined automated process. So I kind of envision that the future might look like we have a bunch of worker bee robots that are working, and we have a bunch of supervisors in the background just watching. Um, and I don't think that maybe is that probably will not happen. But I envision that in my mind, thinking like that's probably what it's going to look like. Curious on what kind of roles in the manufacturing space. I mean, you know this space well more than I do, way more than I do. I'm curious on what roles do you feel like are going to be the roles to be in? Like those are, if I was looking, again, 10 years out, what is something that if I was going to go in that space, I could say, understanding that, the soft skills required, the adaptability, the emotional intelligence, all those things are really, really important to have, and to be empowered to practice and get better at. What are some of those hard skills that may look different than they look today? I mean, it's not going to always be all soft skills. You still have to have engineers. You have to still people that know the ingredients, how things are made. The validation becomes super important. The idea that people still need to work with people, I think, will never go away entirely. I think you'll always have that. There might be a gap in our society where that happens. We probably way long from now, but I think they're going to get back to that, and that will be the missing piece. Companies will end up realizing, oh my gosh, like we don't have people, and maybe that's why. Maybe that's the missing gap. We don't have enough people to motivate, to inspire. So I'd be curious on the hard skills. What do the actual hard skills look like 10 years from now? Because I think we all can agree soft skills are needed and they're becoming more relevant. But what does the hard skills look like 10 years from now?
yeah. So if we look at hard skills and jobs and positions that use them, um, at the very low end of that, very simple tasks and simple operations, we know will be automated, right? Um,
Yep.
because those robots, those cobots, those humanoids, they're all advancing at very rapid paces. They're going to have applications, or they're going to get favorable return on investment very soon if they don't already have it. So we know those jobs will be eliminated. There's no one out in the fields today picking up turnips, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all
Exactly.
automated,
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
right? Every other job, though, I think what we're going to see is an increase in skill level and expectation. So, look at a machine operator. For many decades, a machine operator would be hired, could make a pretty good living, but essentially, what was the job? It was to operate the machine. It was built
Yep.
into the title of the position. And what did that mean? Well, a lot of times it meant like opening the door, feeding in the raw product, pressing some buttons to have the machine do what the machine's going to do, opening it up, taking out the finished product, putting it down, and tending that machine, and maybe having a brush and cleaning it off every once in a while. And that was the job for 8 hours a day, for every year for decades, and you retired from that.
Yeah.
Now, and this gets to your point where that LinkedIn survey said a lot of people don't even know what their company does.
Yeah.
The job and the job title of that operator is changing from a machine operator to a production specialist. So now the
Okay.
job is not tending the machine, operating the machine, opening the machine. It is to ensure that the production run for your shift is going to meet the goals of what the company set out. So instead of measuring your work in time, okay, I'm going to sit here for 8 hours and 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 operate the machine. Now it's, oh, I'm going to sit here for, well, maybe still 8 hours, but at the end I'm going to have 1,000 widgets produced. And what is
Sure.
happening is the machine builders and the automation companies, they're creating dashboards and screens, human machine interfaces, a fancy name just for a little iPad looking device that tells that production specialist, am I getting low on raw material? Is a piece of the machine getting too hot? Is a tool in the machine wearing out? And instead of waiting for everything to stop and then calling the maintenance guy, it's going to be the expectation of the production specialist to be like, oh, there's a yellow light here. Um, I need to take some sort of proactive action to make sure those 1,000 widgets are going to be built during my shift. And I think in every position, and this is a relatively simple one, but I think in
Sure.
every position, people are going to be challenged to take that next level up. Okay, even in marketing, I'm making this data sheet, I'm making this brochure, I'm doing this ad. Well, what's the end goal? Is it really to have a piece of paper at the end, or is it to get more calls coming into the call center? Right. So
Yeah.
people will be more in tune to the overall goal, one of the company, but then also what is, why were they hired in the first place, right? And a much more outcome driven type of mentality.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So when you have these very specialized, I mean, you look at the specialized, careers that exist today. Doctors, lawyers, engineers. Um, these are typically degrees that, I mean, 9 times out of 10, you have to get more than a bachelor degree to excel and succeed in those industries. As we get more specialized, there's two things that I can kind of think of that make sense to me, and that's one, you have more people staying in school longer to get specialized in certain areas, or which I think actually is a really interesting idea, is you have more companies that are getting involved in the educational system, and they're promoting their companies and degree plans with the end state of hiring in place. So that way, when someone gets out of school, they're not having to then go back and relearn everything they just learned in school for this company. Now, this company can say, hey, look, we've already worked with the school to develop this plan. You already know how to work our machines. You already know how to work our processes. You already know what is involved in that. Maybe they've done some projects already with their team and staff to say, look, we've already actually innovated in this space because we do have new minds, new blood coming in to kind of innovate within this space and have a different perspective. I'd be interested in your thoughts around this, and I think that this makes sense, especially where you're going with the idea of getting young kids involved in the smart manufacturing space and being aware that this is something now they don't have to wait until they're 18, 20, even I guess earlier, maybe 16 or so, when they're thinking about what I'm going to do after high school. Now they can be thinking like, oh, that actually looks really interesting, um, and it might be something that comes into fruition later as, hey, this is a really cool opportunity. I know what I want to do, and now not only do I have a career path, I know that I have a job afterwards, because consistency, or not consistency, but this idea of having something that is stable, and having something that is certain, I think is really causing a lot of, at least the kids that I talk to, that's like their biggest concern is certainty and stability. I'm gonna have a job after college, or I don't know what I need to do, and I'm uncertain in that, and so I'm scared because I don't know what to do. And in reality, everybody's still figuring it out, right? Doesn't matter if you're the CEO of the largest company or you're a high school kid, like you're still kind of figuring things out as you go. And so this idea that you could have educational, corporations, manufacturing facilities, kind of more or less team up and say, how do we create some type of career path that allows people to know that strategy, know what their impact is, understand it from the get go, and then gives them a path to actually carry that out.
Yeah, yeah, you make some really fantastic points there. So a lot of schools are now embedding more of that practical experience into their educational journey for the students. So that could be internships, not starting the last semester of senior year, but starting
Yeah,
much earlier, right? If we're looking at college bound students, so maybe freshman or sophomore year, starting that type of internship possibility. I do a lot of work with colleges and schools, on another side of the business, and that's helping them design laboratories that will get the students the hands-on experiences
yeah,
that they need. So if even if they don't exactly, during that semester, work for a local company on a project, at least they're in the school working on the same equipment that is in the factory and have experience with that they can talk to. But yeah, there's a lot of pressure on the school system to justify, the astronomical cost of
yeah,
what a college education costs. So having a very practical mindset, especially in the technical fields, is very, very good. And then, smart industries and smart companies, are looking at these internships as exactly what you said, a feeder into the education system. So I just had two children finish or finishing up their college careers,
awesome.
and both of them had a job offer 6 to 9 months before they graduated.
Oh, that's
So
wonderful. That's great.
I'm sorry,
That's
I did
awesome.
catch it.
No, very good, very good. No, that's amazing, and I think yeah, it's interesting. I can't wait to see how this is going to play out over time. And I think there's so much opportunities in this space, especially. So we're getting kind of to the end here, and I'd love to just get maybe the last question here would be, you know, what advice what advice could you give to people that are looking? I'm going to do it twofold. That are looking for this industry as a possible fit for them, and then the people that are already in this industry that have been through many changes and they're far enough away from retirement to where the next 10 years is going to matter. What kind of advice could you give to kind of bridge the gap between those two buckets of people?
So I think everyone has causes to be optimistic. And the reason I say that is beyond the technology, beyond the robots, behind all the artificial intelligence and the technological wonders of our modern world, is we have a geopolitical shift that's happening right now in the world. And, just turn on the news at any day and there's something going on that seems different than what we've experienced, in our lifetime.
Yeah,
Part of that is it's very clear that manufacturing is going to be reshored to the US or at least nearshored into the NAFTA countries over the next few decades at least. The ball is in motion. There's no way to stop it. So the industry itself is going to be growing. The years, in 1990 when everyone was closing down factories, outsourcing it
yeah,
to other portions of the world. Those days are over, and there's going to be much more manufacturing done domestically, and we know that it's not going to be the manufacturing of the 1960s.
yeah,
It's going to be, what we were calling the smart manufacturing. So I think everyone has causes to be optimistic because there's going to be more and more demand. You might have heard of the CHIPS Act. That's to
yeah,
bring the semiconductor
yep,
manufacturing industry back to the U.S.
yeah,
Um, and the first go around, the federal government threw $30 billion, you know, at that initiative, and $30 billion is still a lot of money. That's just the first wave
yeah, yeah,
of it. So we're in a situation where the industry is going to go up. It's going to increase. We we still need people, in these operations, and we will for the next 10 or 20 or 30 years, at least in my opinion. The lights out factories 10 years away and always will be. That's a
Yeah.
little quip that I'd like to say sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But understanding the company's goal, understanding your job role, um, trying to move the company in that direction, that's always very highly received. So
Yeah.
being engaged, we get back to the soft skills, being engaged, showing your leadership capabilities, no matter what your job title is, right? So a lot of people are like, oh, I'm not the boss, I can't make that decision. People that step up to the plate and say, oh, I'm in this position, maybe I'm not the boss, but I see a better way of doing things, can speak up in a respectful manner and do that, are going to be very well received and have a great career. So,
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
um,
Yeah.
and it never hurts to learn new things. So
100%. Yeah, it's one of the misconceptions I think of. At least my younger self, I thought I'd finish college and I'd never have to learn again. Um, Boy, was I wrong.
yeah,
No, it's great. No, it's great. I think that when you get into that, I mean, smart manufacturing. I mean, what's next? Wait, I mean, it's interesting. That's what's going to happen. And I think that's what's it's challenging, but it's also really fun. And I think that you can have these doom and gloom type of conversations, but at the end of the day, I go back to what you said, and I love it about going back to why, because when you go back to why, it's almost impossible to go doom and gloom because you start to find purpose and you start to find the optimistic nature and approach of things, and that's really where it's at. It's how innovation why innovation exists, right? Is because if the doom and gloom was always there, we'd have no innovation, I think. So,
yeah, exactly. I mean, you gave the example of coding, right? You were thinking, oh, your
yeah,
kids have to code, and all right, so maybe big portions of that are taken over by AI. It's probably the portions that people really didn't like to do,
sure. The
quite
testing, the
honestly. But
troubleshooting,
but if
the
you knew the why,
yeah,
and you think of all the apps that we have on our phone. Goodness, I must have 75 apps on my cell phone right now because I'm a
yeah,
sucker for downloading them. But behind each app, people are thinking like, well, why would I want to be able to call a ride to pick me up, at a moment's notice, wherever I am, and they
yeah,
created Uber, or you know, um, looking at like, why should an app like that exist?
yeah,
What's a new app that would help people?
yeah,
And that's more of that big picture thing, other than sitting there and cranking, away for who knows how long it would take to build an app.
yeah.
Uh, but that entrepreneurial spirit, I think, is something that companies will love and will come to expect in more and more positions, even internally.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Mike, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. It was a pleasure, and yeah, thanks so much for the insights.
Yeah. Thank you, Christopher, and talk to you soon.
All right, talk to you soon. Take care.